Hello, it's fabulous having all of you back here with us in the studio. Today we are looking at the subject of balancing the material with the spiritual. I have the pleasure of interviewing Sister Denise, who has been practicing Raj Yoga meditation with the Brahma Kumaris for over 45 years. Hello and good day.
Hello, Magala.
So this is a question that many have, because it's a tightrope walk when understanding how to live in what we call the real world, but also living with spiritual principles. It's an ideal that many aspire to, but the mistake we make, Sister Denise, is we either weigh too heavily on one side at the expense of the other. So I would like you to tell us how to tightrope walk that you're doing this and not that.
It is difficult, partly because people are not completely aware about how much they're weak, how much they're spiritually depleted. They are very often under a big delusion about to what extent they are materialistic, because intellectually you say, yep, spirituality, this is me, I go for it, I lead a spiritual life, okay, very good, intellectually. But it's not, in your bones, it's not in your blood, it's not percolated down to the depth of your being, and so there's a disconnect. So I think the greatest difficulty is for us to become very, very clear, very real about what is our condition. And the thing that hides it from us is this wall of ego. Ego is the problem. If I intellectualize and I say, yes, I'm a very spiritual person, I perform all the actions, I follow all the rules, etc., etc., that doesn't prove or disprove anything, because it's external. When you want to develop yourself spiritually, you just need to give yourself so much time to really get what it is. You mentioned on another occasion that, God is described in a certain way, and I never realized that it's not actually like that. And I was saying, yes, it is like that. But you have to realize that it took many, many years to click that, it is not what the words say, how you interpret ordinarily. God is not a provider of feelings. God is a provider of something very much more real than simply a feeling, you see. Because a feeling is transient. If somebody loves someone, you will get that feeling from them time to time. But on a deeper level, you will know they love you, whether you can feel it or not, whether they say it or not. It's a knowing. And I think in spirituality, you need to bring it down to that knowing, and then it becomes easy to balance the spiritual and the material, because the spiritual becomes as real, as deep as your engagement with the material world.
Any individual embarking on a spiritual path will experience resistance, and not just a slight amount of resistance, a huge amount of resistance. How does one cope with that backwash?
It's not so easy, because I think when you embark on a spiritual practice, you don't know what it entails. Like when you get married, you don't know what it entails, what you signed up for. But no, the resistance is a big part of it. And in spiritual practice, we talk about cultivating virtues, which is very lovely, but we also need to cultivate powers. And the power of perseverance is very important, because you embark on a path of spiritual practice, you are going swimming upstream, you are going in a different direction from everybody else, you're going in a different direction from your existing direction. And the direction that you are going in until you practice spirituality has got a lot of karmic energy behind it to keep you going in that direction. So you all of a sudden go in a different way, these energies are not going to stop. They're going to go even stronger and say, no, 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 we go this way. And you'll say, no, 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 we're going that way. But you don't have any power behind it. So it takes a lot of time to build up the power to be able to keep going in that direction. And so you need to come to terms with the resistance, and part of it involves not expecting too much of yourself. Many people burn out because they don't understand that this energy that's keeping you in your same old way is huge.
Spirituality is embarked on by people all across the globe for various reasons. And the reason I'm spiritual is very different from the reason as to why you're spiritual, and so on and so on. Now, when someone does spirituality, you have a sense of motivation that this is what I want to do. How does one do it in such a way that you absorb the maximum amount of benefit for yourself?
I think one needs to think about what it's all about, spirituality. What do you mean by spirituality? I can use the word spiritual practice to refer to different kinds of practices and disciplines and behaviors that you embark upon, which are known to help you to awaken the spiritual part of yourself and to bring you into balance between the spiritual and the material. What does it mean if somebody says, I am spiritual? It's quite a vague term, and different people will interpret it different ways. As you said, spiritual for you, spiritual for me, spiritual for someone else is going to be different because we're individuals. Each one of us has to make a comparison and contrast between the materialist me and the spiritual me, and see how those two go together. And I think also determine which one you would say that you are. So in the study that we did earlier in the day, this word dharma was used.
Which means what?
Well, this is a big trick to figure out the meaning of dharma, because very often dharma is translated as religion, but you know, the word religion needs to be limited to the great religious faith traditions of the world. You can't really use religion for something that's other than that, but dharma is used for many things. And one important usage of the word dharma is what you are. And when you're soul conscious, you know that what you are is a soul. And when you're body conscious, you believe that what you are is an object, a material object.
Oh, hold on, that's big. Say that again.
When you're soul conscious, you know that what you are is a soul. So the dharma of you is soul consciousness. Your dharma is to be the implication of that, which is your dharma is you operate, your modus operandi is you come from a place of purity, peace, power, love, bliss. That's your dharma. The dharma of body consciousness is I'm an object made of sense organs, and I'm all about sense gratification. That's your dharma.
Okay, so one is someone and the other is something.
Not really. You are someone, but if you think you're an object, you're under an illusion. So the body conscious person hasn't understood, and the soul conscious person has. So the body consciousness is very often described as ignorance. You just do not know what's what. You do not know what you are. You are ignorant. But ignorance doesn't exonerate you from the impact of the law.
No, it doesn't.
And so you're ignorant, you're breaking the laws of karma left and right or going against them, you'll get yourself into a situation where you have to pay many fines and pay for a lot of consequences that you didn't intend. But get yourself educated and you won't have that problem. Soul consciousness is really someone who did get themselves educated and they got it, that I'm not an object. I'm a spiritual being and I must take into consideration the laws of karma, and I must operate from what I really am, which is my dharma. So body consciousness could be called adharma, the opposite of dharma, that you are operating as what you're not. Dharma is you're operating as what you are. So in Indian language you have a number of prefixes to words like a or par, which means not. And this is used in religious terminology, and it doesn't translate into English very easily. So very often you get translations that are so erroneous that you don't understand the concept. So the accurate description of an idea is very helpful.
Sister Denise, I have had the pleasure of meeting a large number of very good quality people in this lifetime, like astoundingly good people with a myriad of virtues to their name. What you are saying is, if somebody is what you call body conscious, even if they're good people, by virtue of the fact that they're body conscious, they're still creating bad karma?
Everything is a matter of degree, isn't it?
Is it?
Yes, yes, yes.
Tell us about the degree.
You may not have a formal education in spiritual knowledge, but intuitively you get it. And so although you may not be able to distinguish and articulate the difference between body consciousness and soul consciousness, you might not even use that terminology, but how you operate is as a spiritual being. And this will be because of your karma over many, many births, that even if you don't know, but you feel, and you're true to yourself, so you will never say, I'm an object, and I'm just only about sense gratification. A day will come where you really want to know in detail. You'll have a lot of questions if ever you come to a source of information that corresponds with something that you intuitively know, because it's nice to be able to articulate it. If you're extreme body conscious, very into matter and sense gratification, and that's all you live for, then that's a much, extreme degree of body consciousness. You can be slightly soul conscious. Intellectually you know, but then you don't walk your talk, so you're soul conscious in name, but not in fact.
Say more about that.
Well, if you know something, but you don't apply it, then do you really know it?
So to know means to be.
To really know it means you walk your talk.
So within spiritual realms, superficiality or hypocrisy is also a sin.
Yeah, you're not very far ahead. Definitely it would go against your karmic credit and you'd put yourself into debt. It would be body consciousness in the guise of soul consciousness.
Ouch. Ouch.
This is the way it is.
Switching over to the other side, the material. There are those who believe that spirituality means deprivation, abstinence to its extreme form, penance, etc. So it's, I think, a form of flagellation to punish themselves for past sins. What is your take on that?
Well, I would not define that as spirituality. I would define that as conventional religious practices. There are areas where religion and spirituality are synonymous, but there are many conditions and areas where they mean the opposite. So in this, I would say, in religion you will find that in religious practice, but in spiritual practice you will not find that.
I am looking at someone who is endeavoring to lead a spiritual life within the context of his or her life. And obviously, this individual is surrounded by people within his own home, at his job if he has one, and amongst his friends. It's one thing to maintain a personal balance between spirituality and the material world, but it's another thing to do it in the context of your people.
To me, the practice of Raj Yoga, the way I know it, it has to be practiced in conditions of adversity. Because, it's all about dealing with resistance. We talked earlier about internal resistance, and external resistance is also there. So you're all the time dealing with the resistance, and you're all the time having to pay attention on strengthening yourself, because the resistance is not going to go away, it'll probably intensify. You have to keep up with it.
And this is a good thing. How?
Probably the best analogy is you go to work out in the gym, and as your muscles get bigger, then they add the weights so that you have to lift heavier.
So life adds weights.
Life as the gym.
Life is the gym. Okay, newsflash, life is the gym. So what you're saying is, the more deeply spiritual a person becomes, the greater the resistance he experiences. And resistance is a kind word, almost a euphemism, for grief and nonsense and backlash from the people that love you the most, and the people that you work with, and the people that you encounter in the street. All hell breaks loose when you're trying to be spiritual. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Why would somebody do this then, Sister Denise, when it's so much easier to chill at home and watch Netflix and popcorn, Coke, drinks and Coke?
I think why you would do it is because it's meaningful. And part of your deep level of happiness is that it is awakened by doing something that's so meaningful and so ultimately profitable for you that you pay the price. And when you look at it like that, it's a small price to pay.
Small, you say? Yeah, I don't think your definition of small is the same as mine, but moving on. So, maintaining the balance requires quite a bit of alone time, doesn't it?
I think that the solitary time is really important.
Speaking of solitary time, does spirituality advocate spending loads and loads of time by yourself?
It doesn't advocate that per se, because everyone is different, but it's absolutely up to you how you are going to pursue your life. And if you detect that spirituality is a very important part of you, and that you need solitude and silence, you'll look for it, you'll seek it out, you'll make arrangements to get it. I'm a person who needs a lot of alone time, and I'm not really into crowds and big events and this and that, because it doesn't do anything for me. But time alone is really sustaining, so I do seek it out.
Because a spiritual person, somebody who's truly spiritual, is such a rare gem in today's world. Does that not sometimes lead to the feelings of isolation? You know, as we say, it's lonely at the top.
So many people tell me that, oh, it's going to be lonely at the top, don't do that, whatever. And, you know, I know how much alone time I need, and my life is rich with my personal friends who are extraordinary people. And I think that you don't need to have 100 or 100,000 friends as you do in Facebook, but if you have 5, 6, 7, 8, like really deep friendships, people you know who know you, this is important. Friends is a great treasure. And you have a complete relationship with God, so you're never alone. Loneliness, isolation is a very difficult emotion that people experience who haven't populated their inner life. As a judge in the court system, you know that solitary confinement is pretty difficult for people to manage. But I think if you would put me in solitary confinement, I'd be quite happy for a good amount of time.
I wouldn't advise, yes. Within maintaining a balance between spirituality and the material world, how does one enlist the assistance of the Supreme Soul? What does he do for you in that sense?
I wouldn't call it assistance, I would call it accompaniment and companionship, presence. It's a symbiosis, you know, and you're not really looking to God as a supplicant. In religion you do that, but in spirituality you don't.
Supplicant. Explain that word for the audience.
A supplicant is a person who prays. You pray, oh God, would you please do this and do that and do the other. In spirituality, you don't really pray. You contemplate, you cogitate, you commune. It's a different thing. One expression that's often used, prayer and meditation, but people don't really look in the dictionary to see what is the meaning of prayer. It's supplication. It means I want something, I don't have something. Will you please provide? And meditation is deep thought about what God is and what you are, what that connection is all about, what's going on here. That's meditation. It's nothing to do with asking. Sometimes you want clarity, but that's more like a demand. God doesn't really like beggars in the sense of, don't beg for me, you have rights, claim them. Maintain your self-respect, understand who you are. Religion doesn't much get people to come into their power and have direct connection with God, because then they're obsolete.
That's Sister Denise, that's a Hiroshima bomb right there.
Sorry.
No, you're not sorry. What? You're saying what then?
Well, I'm saying in a way that the period of time where the religions dominate human consciousness is a time where humanity is separated from God. And once you come together with God, then you're not looking for God. You have it. So, you know, you don't need your recipe book anymore. Once you've got your degree, you don't need to be studying anymore. It's like a process. The seekers are engaged in trying to find God. Once you find God, then you're not a seeker anymore, you're enjoying the company. It's a different thing. and the religious leaders are guiding people along this long, long way that is the pilgrimage of life, where you're trying to find God and, you know, you don't find. But eventually, you know, one thing I do strongly believe is that every soul will have their encounter with God, in which God brings that soul back to their original glory, purifies them, fills them with spiritual power, and then they're ready for another cycle of time.
Nice, very nice. Okay, so we have to say goodbye to the audience right now. Thank you. It was a meaningful conversation. I feel God's presence, and I hope you at home do so as well. I am of the view that any human being who embarks on a spiritual journey is very brave, and to maintain the balance between that and the material world is even braver, and I wish you Godspeed on your spiritual journey. Thank you and goodbye.